My parents kicked me out in 12th grade for getting my girlfriend pregnant. They said I had ruined their reputation, that everything they worked for would be mocked because of me. I can still hear the way my father said it, calm, cold, like he was reading a sentence, not talking to his son. That night, the rain was hitting the windows so hard it felt like even the sky wanted to drown me. My mother stood near the fireplace, arms folded, still wearing her pearl necklace from the dinner party they'd just come back from. Her face didn't even move when I begged her to speak. "Mom," I whispered, my voice shaking, "please. I didn't mean for this to happen." Claire's scared too. "We're just kids." She turned her eyes to me slowly, as if looking at a stranger. "Michael," she said, her voice low, "you stopped being a kid the moment you decided to play adult games." My father stepped closer, his leather shoes clicking against the floor. "Pack your things. You'll leave tonight. You made a man's decision. Now face a man's consequences." For a second I thought he was bluffing. That maybe he'd shout, ground me, lecture me, anything but this. But then he grabbed the photo frame off the table, the one of me holding my first soccer trophy, and he turned it face down. The sound of that frame clicking against the wood hit harder than any slap ever could. I remember looking at my room one last time, the posters, the old guitar, the half-done homework on the desk. All those little pieces of the life I thought was mine. I stuffed a few clothes in my backpack, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't even zip it properly. When I came back downstairs, he was waiting by the front door, holding an envelope. "There's $200 in here," he said flatly. "That's more than you deserve. Don't come back." I looked at him, trying to find even a shadow of the man who used to lift me on his shoulders, who used to say, "Family means forever." And all I could manage to whisper was, "Guess forever has conditions, huh?" He didn't answer. He just opened the door. Cold wind and rain rushed in like the world itself wanted me gone. As I stepped out, my mother didn't even turn around. She just said, "Don't embarrass us again, Michael." The door shut behind me, and the porch light flickered once before going dark. That was the moment it really hit me. I didn't have a home anymore. The rain soaked me through before I even reached the street. I had nowhere to go but one place, Claire's. She lived 2 towns over, in a beat-up trailer behind her aunt's small convenience store. Her family didn't have much, but she had always been my peace. Soft voice, messy hair, and eyes that made everything else quiet. As I walked, I thought about the first time she told me she was pregnant. Her hands were trembling when she showed me the test. We were sitting on the bleachers after practice, and she said, "I'm scared, Michael." I said, "We'll figure it out." But I had no idea how. The road stretched endlessly under the rain. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, a text from Claire. "Don't come here yet. Something happened. Wait for me at the old gas station." My stomach dropped. That gas station had been closed for years. The one off Highway 43, the same road my father used to drive every morning to work. The same one I wasn't supposed to be near after dark. I pulled my hood tighter and started walking faster, the rain turning the dirt road into mud. Every few minutes, lightning flashed, lighting up the world in brief bursts. The old trees, the broken signs, the ghosts of the life I just lost. When I finally saw the gas station, its rusted sign swinging in the wind, I froze. There was a black sedan parked by the pumps, engine running, headlights low, like whoever was inside didn't want to be seen. I stayed behind a fence, watching. 2 figures sat inside, one in the driver's seat, one in the back. Through the rain, I couldn't make out faces, until lightning struck again. And in that split second of light, I saw him. It was my father, sitting in the driver's seat, next to a woman with long blonde hair, who looked exactly like Claire's mother. My heart went numb. Why were they together here? And what did they need to hide? In the middle of a storm? At a place no one was supposed to go? Before I could move, the passenger door opened. A figure stepped out with an umbrella and looked straight toward where I was standing. The rain didn't stop. It came down harder, thick drops slicing through the night like broken glass. I stood behind the fence, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. That black sedan, my father's, sat under the flickering gas station light, the sound of its running engine blending with the storm. When the figure stepped out, umbrella tilted against the rain. I squinted through the darkness. The face became clearer. Pale skin, red lipstick smudged. The kind of face that used to smile at me every morning when I came to pick up Claire. It was Claire's mother, Mrs. Dalton. She said something to my father, her voice sharp, nearly breaking through the rain. I couldn't hear all of it, but one word came out clear. Papers. Papers? My father opened his briefcase. The one with the golden clasp he never let anyone touch, even at home. He took out a manila folder and handed it to her. I crouched lower, barely breathing. Mrs. Dalton's hand shook as she flipped through it. She kept glancing toward the road like she was scared someone would see. Then she pulled something from her purse, a small white envelope, and handed it back to him. Money, a thick envelope sealed. The two of them stood there under the flickering light, exchanging words and glances that made my stomach twist. My father looked furious, not shocked, not ashamed, just cold like he was finishing business. Lightning flashed again, and for half a second, I saw the name written across the folder. Claire Dalton, medical. My blood ran cold. I wanted to scream, to run at him and demand what he was doing, but my body wouldn't move. I just stood there soaked and frozen, watching my father, the man who threw me out of his house for shaming the family, secretly meeting the mother of the girl he blamed me for loving. And then I saw it. My father reached into his coat pocket and handed her a second envelope. She hesitated, then took it. Her voice broke through the rain this time, just enough for me to hear. This ends everything, Caleb. After tonight, none of this ever happened. Caleb, my father's name. My mind started spinning. Ends everything? What was she talking about? The two of them turned toward the car again, and that's when I saw the backseat door open. Someone was sitting inside. A small shadow moved. Someone crying quietly, head pressed against the window. Claire, she was there. Her hair was messy, her hoodie drenched. She looked broken, but worse, she looked scared of them. I gripped the fence so tight my knuckles went white. What was my father doing with her? Why was she crying? Mrs. Dalton turned and whispered something to her daughter through the open door. Claire shook her head violently, shouting something I couldn't hear. Then my father's voice cut through everything, deep, angry, commanding. It's already done. You don't have a choice now. My chest tightened. I wanted to move, to run, to do something, but fear glued me to the spot. Then suddenly, Claire pushed the door open and ran into the rain. Claire! I shouted before I could stop myself. Both my father and Mrs. Dalton froze. Their heads snapped toward me. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, all three of us were staring at each other. Me on the other side of the fence, them under the gas station light, and Claire halfway between us, sobbing, rain pouring down her face. My father's eyes went wide. Michael? He said, his voice cold but cracking for the first time. Claire turned to me, her lips trembling. They made me, Michael, she cried. They made me. But before she could finish, my father shouted, Get in the car now! Mrs. Dalton grabbed Claire's arm, pulling her toward the sedan. Claire struggled, screaming, You can't do this. You can't. Michael, go home! My father roared, stepping toward me. That was when I saw what he dropped. The folder. It slipped from his hand, landing in a puddle near the pump. The rain soaked it instantly, ink bleeding through. I rushed forward, vaulting the fence. He shouted something, but I didn't care. I grabbed the folder and opened it with shaking hands. Inside were papers, documents, hospital forms, consent signatures, and something that made my vision blur. Procedure, termination. Patient Claire Dalton. Guardian consent, Caleb Voss. My father's name. He had signed off on it. The world tilted. I couldn't breathe. My father reached for me, his voice breaking this time. Michael, you don't understand. But I was already backing away, rain mixing with tears. You did this? I whispered. You signed for her? Claire was screaming now, trying to pull away from her mother. I told you no. I told you I wanted to keep it. My father stepped closer. You're a child. You have no idea what this would have done. You took my life, I spat, my voice trembling with rage. You took hers too. He looked at me with something between pity and pride. That same look he always gave when he thought he was saving me from myself. And then he said the one sentence I'll never forget. You should be thanking me, son. I just saved your future. Before I could even respond, Mrs. Dalton dragged Claire into the car. The sedan sped off, tires screeching through the wet road, red tail lights disappearing into the black. I fell to my knees, clutching the ruined papers, the rain washing over me like the sky itself wanted to bury me. My father stood there silent, watching me break. Then he turned and walked back to his car without another word. That was the night everything inside me died, the night I stopped being his son. But what I didn't know then was that 22 years later, he would come back, not to apologize, not to make peace, but to take something from me. Something he had no right to claim. The sound of rain still visits me sometimes. Not real rain, just the memory of it. The night my father took everything I loved. I promised myself I'd never forgive him. That promise became my anchor. 22 years. 22 long years since I stood on that flooded road, clutching those ruined papers. Now I'm 40. My name's still Michael Voss, though sometimes I wish it wasn't. I live in a small house on the edge of Asheville, North Carolina, 2 hours away from everything I ever used to call home. The kind of place where mornings are quiet, where the fog rolls off the mountains like old ghosts refusing to leave. People here know me as Mr. Voss, the man who owns a repair shop off the highway. I fix what's broken, lawnmowers, radios, sometimes even fences, things that don't ask questions, things that don't lie. I've built a life out of silence, out of control, out of keeping the past buried 6 feet deep. Until one Thursday evening, the past found my door. It was just after 7. The air smelled like burnt coffee and motor oil. I was closing up the shop when I saw 2 figures outside my gate. An older man in a tailored suit, a woman beside him holding a leather purse. For a second I thought I was imagining things. Then the man spoke, and my chest froze. "Michael," he said softly, "it's been a long time." My father, Caleb Voss. I hadn't heard that voice since the night he ripped my world apart. My heart thudded once, then went silent. He looked older, gray hair at the temples, shoulders a little stooped, but his eyes were still the same, sharp, commanding, full of quiet judgment. The woman next to him stepped forward. My mother, Marilyn, still graceful, still distant. She clutched her purse like it was her shield. I didn't move, didn't speak. My father smiled, that same cold smile that used to make me feel 10 years old again. "We're not here to fight," he said. "We just want to talk." "Talk?" I whispered, my voice low. "After 22 years?" He nodded. "There are things you don't understand. Things that need to be set right." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You mean like the last time you set things right? The night you decided my life for me?" My mother's lips trembled. "Michael, please!" "Don't!" I snapped. "You don't get to say my name like it still belongs to you." For a moment none of us spoke. Only the wind moved, gentle, almost mocking. Then my father looked over my shoulder, at the small house behind me, and said something that made my stomach drop. "We'd like to meet her." "Her," I repeated, frowning. He gestured toward the front porch. "The girl in the photo. The one on your mantel." I turned halfway, instinctively glancing inside through the window. On the mantel above the fireplace sat a single photo. Me and a girl with chestnut hair, about 20 years old, smiling with a college acceptance letter in her hand. "My daughter." My throat tightened. "You're not going near her." My father's eyes softened, almost pitying. "Michael, we just want to see our granddaughter." The words didn't register at first. Then they hit, sharp and violent. "Granddaughter?" I repeated, stepping closer. "You have no right to call her that." "She's family," my mother whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "Family?" I hissed. "You disowned me before she was even born. You made sure she'd never exist." My father's face hardened again. "She has her mother's eyes," he said quietly. "Claire's." My heart stopped. Every sound, every flicker of wind seemed to vanish. "How do you know that?" I said slowly. He looked at me, calm, deliberate. "Because we found her." My blood turned to ice. "You're lying." He shook his head. "No, we've been in contact with her for months. She's the one who told us about the scholarship. About you." She reached out first. I took a step back, my hands trembling. "She wouldn't," I said. "She doesn't even know who you are." My father's expression was unreadable. "Children are curious, Michael." "She wanted to know where she came from." "No," my voice cracked. "She came from me, not you." He sighed, pulling a folded document from his jacket pocket. "You've always misunderstood what's best for you. For her. But that's why we're here, to make it right." He handed me the paper. I didn't want to touch it, but I did. The seal at the top made my knees weaken. Legal papers. "Custody claim?" I muttered, scanning it. "What the hell is this?" My father's tone was cold. "You were never legally recognized as her father. You were a minor. You never filed for guardianship." My hands shook. "What are you saying?" He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "We're saying she was adopted into the Voss family when Claire disappeared. You just didn't know." I stared at him, stunned, unable to breathe. "You're lying." He glanced at my mother, then back at me. "You've built a life around a girl who was never yours to claim." My vision blurred with rage. "Get off my property." "Michael," my mother pleaded, her voice cracking for the first time. "We didn't come here to hurt you." "You already did," I whispered. 22 years ago. And before they could say another word, I slammed the gate shut and locked it. My father didn't move. He just stood there, rain dripping off the brim of his hat. His voice quiet but cold as ever. "You'll see us again, son. The court date is next month." They turned and walked away, their silhouettes fading into the mist. Inside, I dropped to my knees, staring at the photo on the mantel. My daughter's smile frozen forever in that frame. She didn't know any of this. Not yet. But as thunder rolled across the mountains, one truth settled heavy in my chest. My father hadn't come to talk. He'd come to finish what he started. The courthouse smelled like rain and paper, the kind of cold, still air that makes every sound echo a little too long. It had been 3 weeks since they'd come to my door, 3 weeks since my father's voice haunted every corner of my sleep. Now I stood at the front steps, hands shaking, the folder of documents pressed against my chest. The world had turned full circle. 22 years after they threw me out. The same people who'd erased me were dragging me back in, this time, to erase my daughter too. Inside, the marble floors gleamed like they'd never seen a mistake in their life. My boots left wet marks on them anyway. Across the room I saw them. My father, sitting upright in a dark gray suit. His tie the same deep blue he wore to church every Sunday when I was a boy. My mother sat beside him, her hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. They looked calm, too calm. Like people attending a funeral they planned themselves. And then I saw her, Ella, my daughter. She sat across the aisle with a state-appointed lawyer beside her. Her brown hair, Claire's hair, fell loose over her shoulders. She glanced up once, her eyes meeting mine for a heartbeat. I smiled weakly, but she didn't smile back. She just looked away. That single moment shattered me more than anything my father ever said. When the judge walked in, everyone rose. The gavel struck once, and it felt like thunder in my skull. "Case number 1347V, the clerk read. Voss versus Voss, petition for custody review." My lawyer, a quiet man named Jonathan Hale, leaned toward me. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We'll handle this logically." I wanted to laugh. Logic? There was nothing logical about parents suing their son for the granddaughter they didn't even raise. The judge looked at my father first. "Mr. Caleb Voss, you may begin." My father stood slowly, buttoning his coat like a ritual. His voice was smooth, calm, rehearsed, the same tone he used at every church meeting and business dinner. "Your Honor," he began, "we're here today not out of hostility but out of love. 22 years ago, my son Michael made decisions as a child that changed many lives. We stepped in to ensure the child, Ella, was provided for and legally protected." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We are here now because, as her biological grandparents and legal guardians, we believe Michael is no longer in a position to provide the stability she needs." The courtroom was silent, except for the faint scratching of a pen from the clerk's desk. I clenched my fists under the table. When it was my turn, I stood. "Your Honor," I said, my voice trembling but firm, "I've spent my entire adult life building a home for my daughter. I raised her. I taught her how to drive, how to fix things, how to stand on her own. Everything she knows about love, responsibility, and trust, and she learned from me." I glanced at my father. He didn't flinch. "But my parents," I continued, "they abandoned me when I was 17. They weren't there for her first steps, her birthdays, her life. And now they show up with papers they forged 22 years ago, claiming she was theirs all along." The judge adjusted his glasses. "Do you have proof of forgery?" I hesitated, then handed the folder forward. Inside were the hospital forms, the same kind my father had signed for Claire years ago. The ink was faded, but his name still cut through like a knife. "My father forged Claire's consent," I said. "He made medical decisions without her approval. I believe he did the same with the adoption records." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. My father's face turned a shade paler, but his composure never cracked. The judge frowned, flipping through the papers. "We'll have these verified by the state registrar," he said, setting them aside. My lawyer sat back, whispering. That bought us time. But as I exhaled, I caught movement across the aisle. My father was whispering something to his attorney, a tall man in a navy suit. The man nodded once, stood, and addressed the court. Your Honor, with the court's permission, the petitioners would like to call a witness. The judge raised an eyebrow. A witness who? The man turned slightly, his voice cutting through the air like frost. Claire Dalton. My knees went weak. My heart stopped. For a second I thought I'd misheard him. The judge blinked. You're saying she's alive? My father smiled faintly. Yes, Your Honor. She's been in contact with us for several months. She's here today. Every sound vanished from the room. The world turned silent, except for the creak of the side door opening. A woman stepped inside, her movements slow, deliberate. Her hair was darker, shorter. Her eyes looked tired, older, but unmistakable. It was Claire. My throat tightened. My breath caught. She looked at me, really looked, and I saw 22 years of pain sitting behind her eyes. The judge gestured toward the witness stand. Ms. Dalton, please take your seat. She nodded faintly and sat down, her hands trembling as she swore to tell the truth. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My father leaned back in his chair, his expression calm, almost satisfied. The lawyer asked the first question. Ms. Dalton, can you please state your relationship to the respondent? Mr. Michael Voss? Her voice cracked. He's the father of my child. And that child, the lawyer continued, is Ella Voss. Currently living under Michael's custody? Claire's eyes filled with tears. Yes. Do you have any objections to your parents-in-law assuming guardianship? She hesitated, long enough for my heart to start hoping, then whispered, No. The world tilted. I felt like the floor had been pulled from beneath me. I looked at her, confused, betrayed. Claire, why? She met my eyes for a single heartbeat, her face pale. Then she looked away. Because, she said softly, they told me what you did. My father's eyes flicked toward me, calm, controlled, and for the first time in decades, I realized something chilling. This wasn't about family. This wasn't even about Ella. This was war. And my father had just brought back the one ghost I thought I'd buried forever. The rule in my house was simple. No past, no pain. No yelling, no grudges, no ghosts. But that rule shattered the night someone knocked on my door. It was a cold, wet night in Asheville. The rain fell just like it did 22 years ago, the night I was thrown out. I was in the middle of fixing a loose shelf in the kitchen when I heard the knock. Slow, heavy, and deliberate. At first I thought it was a delivery, but something about the rhythm made my chest tighten. It wasn't random. It was measured, familiar. I wiped my hands, walked to the door, and looked through the glass. Two figures stood on the porch. A man and a woman, umbrella half broken, clothes soaked through. The porch light flickered once, and that's when I froze. It was them. My parents. The world tilted for a second. I could hear the rain on the tin roof, the hum of the fridge, my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. It had been 22 years since that night. 22 years since they'd slammed the door on me, left me standing in the rain with nothing but a trash bag and a broken name. And now, here they were, standing outside my house, like ghosts who had found their way home. When I opened the door, my father didn't even wait for me to speak. He said, Michael, we need your help. Just like that. No hello, no apology. No son, I just stared at him. His once dark hair was streaked with gray, his shoulders smaller than I remembered. But his eyes, those cold, judging eyes, they hadn't changed. My mother stood beside him, her face soft but trembling like she was made of glass. Let us see her, she whispered. I blinked. Who? Your daughter, she said. Our granddaughter. My chest went tight. I stepped out onto the porch, letting the rain hit my face. The world felt blurry, unreal. For a moment, I wondered if they had the wrong person, if this was some cruel joke. Then my father spoke again, his tone sharp. We've been trying to reach you for months. We know about her, Michael. We know she's alive. My voice cracked. There is no daughter, I said quietly. My mother flinched, as if the words were a slap. My father frowned, shaking his head. Stop lying. We know Ara gave birth. We know what you did. The name Ara hit me like lightning. I hadn't heard her name out loud in years. Ara Quinn, the girl who made me believe love could outlast the storm. The girl who was pregnant with my child. The girl who vanished before I ever got to say goodbye. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as dust. You don't get to say her name, I said, my voice barely holding steady. They looked shocked, like they still believed they owned the right to the truth. My mother tried to reach for my hand. I stepped back. Michael, please. We're not here to fight. We just want to meet her. We want to see our granddaughter once before. Before what? I interrupted. Before you decide I'm worth loving again. The words cut deeper than I wanted them to. I could feel the years of bitterness crawling out of me, clawing its way into the cold air between us. I was 17, I said. You didn't protect me. You didn't guide me. You threw me away like trash. You told me I ruined your name. And now you're standing here pretending we're family? My father's jaw tightened. You did ruin our name. We had to move. I lost everything because of that scandal. And I lost everything because you were my father. I shot back. The rain poured harder. Thunder rolled behind the mountains. My voice trembled but didn't break. I raised my son without you. I built this house without you. I made peace with the silence you left. You don't get to walk in now and demand to see a ghost that doesn't exist. My father's face went pale. So, she didn't survive? I stared into his eyes, those same eyes that had once looked right through me, and said slowly, she didn't survive because of you. For the first time in my life, I saw him speechless. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words died in his throat. My mother's lip quivered, her hand trembling as she clutched her husband's arm. She was our blood. She whispered. I exhaled sharply. She was mine first. The silence that followed was unbearable, heavy with all the words we never said, all the years they never lived. Finally, my father muttered, You'll regret this. I almost laughed. I already did once, I won't again. I slowly stepped back inside, the floor creaking under my feet. Their eyes followed me until the door met the frame. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently. And as the latch clicked into place, something strange happened. I didn't feel angry. Just empty. I leaned my back against the door, breathing slowly. My son Liam came down the stairs, rubbing his eyes, his hair messy. Dad, who is that? I forced a small smile. Just someone who forgot how to say sorry. He nodded sleepily, not understanding, and went back upstairs. I turned off the porch light, ready to put the night behind me. But when I glanced through the blinds, their car was still parked outside. No headlights, no movement, just two silhouettes sitting in the dark, watching the house. And that's when I noticed something else. Under the wiper blade of my truck, a white envelope. Rainwater blurred the ink, but I could still make out my father's handwriting. For your own good, open immediately. My stomach sank. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. Not even close. The next morning, Michael opens the envelope. Inside is a court summons. His parents are suing him for custody of the child they claim is theirs by right. And attached to the documents is something that changes everything. A DNA test that shouldn't exist. The envelope sat on my kitchen table all night. I didn't touch it. Didn't even look at it after the first glance. But every time the wind pushed against the windows, I swore I could hear my father's voice whispering through the rain. For your own good, open immediately. By morning, the storm had passed. The air outside was clean, cold, and silent, like the world had decided to start over. But inside my chest, it was still thundering. Liam had already gone to school. The house was quiet. Just me, the envelope, and 22 years of ghosts sitting across the table. I finally tore it open. A folded stack of papers slid out, stamped, official, heavy. The first line made my stomach twist. Caleb and Elaine Hale vs. Michael Hale, petition for custodial rights. Custody. Custody of what? I kept reading, my hands trembling. The plaintiffs seek custody and legal guardianship of the minor child. Claire Hale, born May 2004. I froze. My throat closed. Claire Hale? That name, that date, it wasn't possible. Claire would have been the child Era was pregnant with, the one who never made it, the one I thought I'd buried in memory, not in the ground. I dropped into the chair, breathing hard, staring at the page as if it would change if I blinked enough times. There was more. Stapled to the back of the document was a DNA report, my name printed in bold across the header, and below it, another name, Claire Quinn, 99.9% paternal match. I whispered to the empty room. This can't be real. I hadn't given any DNA sample, not in years, not for any test, so how did they get this? The papers shook in my hand as my mind tried to make sense of it. Did Ara? No, she couldn't have. She disappeared, unless... I pushed away from the table, pacing. My reflection in the kitchen window looked like a stranger, older, harder, scared. For the first time in decades, I didn't know what was true anymore. At noon, my phone rang, a blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. Michael Hale? A voice said, calm and precise. "This is Attorney Lyle from the firm of Warner and Pierce. I represent your parents." My chest tightened. "What the hell is this?" "Your parents wish to establish custodial rights over their biological granddaughter. We have reason to believe she is alive and under the care of a guardian connected to you." "She's dead," I snapped. "There is no granddaughter." A pause. The man exhaled. "Then I suggest you come to court next week and prove that." The line went dead. I stood there, holding the phone like it weighed 100 pounds. For years I thought the pain had dulled, that I'd buried it deep enough that even memory couldn't dig it up. But hearing that name, it split me wide open again. I grabbed my jacket and keys, heart pounding. There was only one person who could possibly explain this. Ara. But I hadn't seen her in more than 2 decades. Not since the night at the bus station. I drove for hours, retracing old highways. The same ones I'd taken as a scared 17-year-old kid. Every mile was a flashback. The rain, the headlights, the sound of her voice saying, "We'll make it somehow." When I reached her hometown, the streets looked smaller, quieter. The same gas station, the same rusted diner sign. Only this time I wasn't looking for a way out. I was looking for the truth. I parked outside the small yellow house where I'd last seen her aunt. My hands shook as I knocked on the door. An elderly woman answered, gray hair tied back, eyes wide with shock. "Michael?" she whispered. I thought you were—" "I need to know where Ara is," I said quickly. Her eyes darted down, her lips tightening. "You should have come sooner." "What do you mean?" She stepped aside, letting me in. The house smelled like dust and lavender. On the mantel were photos, dozens of them. And right in the middle, one that made my heart stop. It was Ara, older, smiling, and standing beside her was a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, with her same green eyes. The caption at the bottom read, "Claire, class of 2023. My knees almost gave out. "She's alive," I whispered. The aunt nodded softly. "Ara left town when she was 5 months pregnant. Said it wasn't safe for the baby. She came back years later, quiet, kept to herself. She never told anyone where she'd been." I stared at the picture again, my voice barely a breath. "Does she know who I am?" The old woman hesitated. "She knows. But Ara told her you didn't want to be found." That sentence hit me harder than any punch my father ever gave me. All these years, she thought I abandoned her. I turned toward the door, the world spinning. "Where is she now?" The aunt reached for my arm. "Michael, before you go, you need to understand something. Your parents came here months ago. They found her first." My chest went cold. "What?" "They told her lies, Michael. Said you'd moved on, said you wanted nothing to do with her. They offered money, promises." I swallowed hard, the edges of my vision blurring. "What did she say?" "She told them she'd never let them near the girl." I exhaled, shaky. "And Ara?" Her voice broke. "She passed away last month. Heart condition. Claire's alone now." The room tilted. My knees buckled. Everything, 22 years of silence, pain, anger, came crashing in one soundless wave. When I finally looked up, the aunt pressed something into my hand, a folded note. "Ara left this for you. Said if you ever came back, you'd know what it meant." I unfolded it slowly. Just one line, written in her familiar handwriting. "She has your eyes, Michael. Don't let them take her." The paper trembled in my hands. My heart felt like it was splitting open. My parents weren't just back for revenge. They were back to take the only piece of love I ever had left. And now, for the first time in 2 decades, I wasn't the scared kid standing in the rain anymore. I was a father. And this time, I wasn't running. Michael tracks down Claire, but when he finally meets her, she already knows who he is, and she's not the only one waiting for him. A secret buried in Ara's death will explode in the courtroom, and the truth will change everything. The courthouse in Asheville smelled like paper and fear. Polished floors, whispering voices, fluorescent lights that hummed like angry bees. I'd been here before as a visitor once, years ago, but this time I was standing at the center of a war I never started. The plaque on the door read, "Hail v. Hail, custodial hearing." My parents were already seated when I entered. My father in a dark gray suit, his silver watch gleaming under the light, the same one that ticked too loudly when I was a kid. My mother sat beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her face calm in the way only guilt can be. At the far end of the courtroom sat a girl, maybe 19. Brown jacket, long hair that shimmered chestnut under the light. nervous hands folded around a silver bracelet. She looked up once, and in that single second, the air left my lungs. Claire, Ara's eyes, my jawline, a soul I didn't know but somehow recognized. For years I had imagined her as a memory that never existed. Now she was breathing, real, staring right at me. The judge entered. All rise. When we sat, my father's lawyer began. Your Honor, my clients, Caleb and Elaine Hale, are the biological grandparents of Claire Quinn. Their son, Michael Hale, knowingly abandoned both the child and her mother 20 years ago. They are seeking immediate custodial guardianship to protect the child's welfare. I wanted to laugh, to stand up and scream, but I didn't. I just stared at the floor, jaw tight, letting every lie hang in the air like poison. Then my lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client did not abandon anyone. He was a 17-year-old boy who was thrown out of his home with nothing but a trash bag because his parents couldn't bear the thought of their reputation being questioned. The mother, Ara Quinn, raised the child alone. She passed away last month. Before she died, she wrote a letter, one that will speak for her. He handed the folded note to the judge, the same one Ara's aunt gave me. The judge unfolded it carefully. Silence filled the room as he read aloud. She has your eyes, Michael. Don't let them take her. My mother's shoulders trembled. My father's face hardened. Then Claire stood up. Her voice was soft but clear. I know who my parents are, she said. Everyone turned toward her. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes, Ara's eyes, were steady. My mom told me stories about him. About Michael. How he wanted to protect us, but they didn't let him. How she left to keep me safe. I used to think she was lying until I saw the photo. She reached into her bag and held up an old picture, me and Ara at 17, smiling on a wooden bridge, my shirt damp with rain, her hair tangled, both of us laughing like we didn't know what pain was yet. She said he was the kind of person who'd rather be hated than watch someone else hurt. The judge leaned forward. Miss Quinn, are you saying you wish to remain with Mr. Hale? Claire nodded. He's my father. That's all I've ever wanted. The courtroom went silent. Then slowly my mother began to cry. Not quiet tears. The kind that come when you finally realize the damage can't be undone. My father didn't move. His jaw flexed, his eyes darting between us, searching for control he no longer had. When the judge spoke again, his words felt like thunder. Custody is hereby granted to Michael Hale. This court recognizes him as the biological and custodial parent of Claire Quinn. The gavel struck once, final, echoing. My father stood abruptly. This isn't over. I turned to face him. It already is. He glared at me, but behind the anger I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Fear of being irrelevant. Fear of losing the power he'd used as a weapon his whole life. He walked out, my mother trailing behind him, her shoulders bent under the weight of everything she never said. The courtroom emptied slowly. Only Claire and I remained. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she walked up to me, clutching the photo. She said you'd find me one day, she whispered. She said when you did, I'd know it was really you because you'd be the only one, not asking for forgiveness. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry it took this long. She smiled through tears. It's okay. You came. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows, warm against the cold marble floor. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. Outside, the world looked brighter, alive again. The same mountains, the same sky, but everything felt new. We walked down the courthouse steps together. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but it all sounded distant. Claire slipped her hand into mine. Can we go see her? She asked softly. I nodded. Yeah, she'd like that. We drove for hours to the old hill where Ara was buried. The same place where the rain first washed me clean of everything I thought I was. The grass swayed gently in the wind. I placed the folded letter beside the gravestone, my fingers tracing her name. She was right, I whispered. She has my eyes. Claire knelt beside me, silent. For a while we just sat there. Two people linked by blood, pain, and the kind of love that survives exile. As the sun began to set, I looked at her and said the truth I'd been carrying for decades. They threw me out once for loving someone too much. I'm done hiding from that kind of love. Claire smiled faintly. Then let's go home, Dad. We stood and walked back toward the car, leaving behind the storm that started it all. Behind us, the last light faded over the gravestone, the name, Ara Quinn, glowing gold for one heartbeat longer, as if she'd waited 20 years just to see this. And somewhere, I swear I could hear her voice in the wind. You kept your promise. The old house in Eugene still stands, but it's empty now. Neighbors say they sometimes see lights flicker on in the study at night. Hear a clock ticking with no one inside. I never went back. Some doors once closed stay that way. But sometimes, on rainy nights, I find myself staring out the window, watching the drops slide down the glass. And I remember the boy standing in the rain with a trash bag, and the man who walked out of that storm to find his daughter.